Folks, we're in December 1995. Merry Christmas, Oracle. Happy holidays and all that good stuff. The Monday Night War is well underway. Extreme Championship Wrestling is in for a major month. We got a lot to talk about. Oracle, how are you on this wonderful Thursday evening, my friend? You.
You know what's funny? Whenever we do the Grand, for some reason, this is the second week in a row this has happened. Whenever we do this on the Grand,
Yeah.
I always remember to unmute myself.
Yeah.
But for some reason on the free streams where the whole world can see me, my brain decides that it's not going to unmute myself. And I'm sure it's very funny every time.
It's every time I'm like, am I losing my mind? Here, his mouth's moving. I can't hear anything.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sure it's fun. How are you anyway?
I'm great.
Good. We have a lot to talk about, don't we? This is an exciting one. There's definitely, I can, give a little tease here, folks. What's ahead? There's a shift of momentum in some ways. In some ways, there's a continuation of some other trends we've seen. We have a lot to talk about, so we will do this very quickly, Oracle, in terms of the recap of last month. And just, a very brief kind of look back. Mm-hmm. The TV results were split, but man, WCW and WWF produced some hilarious pay-per-views, didn't they? It was quite the month of November. Again, we have a lot to talk about. So briefly, kind of set the stage as we always do here for December, heading into December. Oracle, go ahead.
So we've got Starrcade for WCW. Mm-hmm. We've got Seasons Beatings in Your House 5 for the World Wrestling Federation, and we've got December to Dismember, an arena show that was just only shown in excerpts on the network TV. So we'll have some of that, and but the big deal there for ECW in the month of December of '95 is that on the 29th, Friday the 29th of December, they make their way to Queens, New York, their first show in New York City ever, at the Lost Battalion Hall, which becomes a very famous ECW venue for years to come after this. And an event called Holiday Hell. So those are the three sort of main focal points of the shows. As far as stories and stuff like that, the big things we want to keep in mind for ECW, Taz has turned heel and has aligned himself with Pennsylvania Athletic Commission referee Bill Alfonso. You have to say that entire thing every time. Because it's way better that way. And we are reaching the culmination of the three-way world title feud between Mike Whipwreck, superstar Steve Austin, and the Sandman. WCW is in the midst of a deep battle with New Japan Pro Wrestling that is highly touted and talked about, certainly not in passing by Steve Mongo McMichael or Eric Bischoff, while Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, traverse to the ring on live on Nitro. They bring it up every night. They talk about it obsessively, and certainly don't rant about Hulk Hogan's suspension.
Would you say that's the big angle we often talk about? Right? That's a good example, right? Real overarching angle.
The real overarching angle is Hulk Hogan losing his temper and getting suspended for 1 week so he could, I guess, enjoy his holidays. But they really build the triangle match between Sting, Luger, and Flair. I mean, they build that sucker up. And I really love the build to that match. I think it's excellent. With WWF, we have Brett Bulldog. The highlight of that build, from what I understand, actually occurs on the Superstars.
Right.
There's a famous segment where Diana and Davey Boy are interviewed, on Superstars. I've
Oh,
never seen it, but
yes.
I've heard about it. Have you seen
Yes.
this?
I've seen clips.
Where
I
they're just all
believe, yeah.
condescending on Brett and talking about how
Yeah.
awkward it is in their family.
I want to say someone tweeted it recently. I want to say, yeah, it's good shit,
Um,
man.
and then, of course, but the real big story in WWF is the overarching issue with Shawn Michaels and his post-concussive syndrome, as Vince likes to say, and the many videos and doctors' analyses and Vince McMahon voiceovers and tell me a lie to close out the year. So we have lots of things going on.
You sure do, man. I looked at that format and I said, yeah, we got a lot to talk about. So we'll get into that, folks. If you can, if you enjoy this video, give it some time. Maybe it'll pop you, maybe it won't. But if it does, give us one of those likes up gimmicks that the YouTube kids ask for these days. Also, if you have a comment or question or just want to show some love to the show, streamlabs.com/late-night-grin. No problem if not. We're probably going to be looking at the chat throughout anyway, but we do have a lot to cover, right? So there you go. All right. We have started every week with ECW. They have won. I said at the start, right? We'll start with the winner of the month. And I just assumed that was going to mean ECW for a while. Huge momentum shift on the television front. WCW Monday Nitro with a clean sweep here. So we will start with them. Firstly, before we go piece by piece, so in the kind of most general way you can, was you surprising yourself as you was highlighting these weeks with the Nitro color? Was you this shocked me when I saw this, man. Any just kind of broad thoughts on that part of it first?
ECW was really good throughout the month. There were some Raws that were just not great. The Raws were just kind of Raw struggled a bit here, which really isn't that surprising. But WCW, they're figuring out the format for Nitro. They're figuring out to make it somewhat of a variety wrestling show. They're doing angles. The overarching storyline, particularly with the triangle match build. Even Hogan's delusional stuff is actually kind of fun to watch because the crowd's so hot.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I think it's the December 11th show. But this was the first really true great month of Nitro, I think, where you have Flair coming out with Charles Barkley on December 4th in Phoenix.
Yeah.
You have the December 11th tag. Or you know what? It might be December 4th. Where Flair and Arn wrestle Hogan and Sting. That match is awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
That match is really good. That's a really good TV match. And the crowd hates Hogan. They're booing him. Hissing him and booing him. And
there's some really good in the coming months here. The usage of Arn as a TV guy, it comes back, right? And they use him on Nitro, and it's really fun. So carry on, though. Go ahead.
Yeah. They do the big Horseman angle. The first, the one we needed. With Orndorff, and we'll talk about that here. More soon. Medusa's debut.
Yes, well, when you think about it, there's a lot, right? Nitro.
Right. Savage taking on all comers, defending the title like every week.
Yeah.
Defends it, against the Giant on the 18th, defends it against Flair on Christmas. Like it's really well done. I think they're putting it together. They're getting Malenko and Eddie and Benoit and all these guys on the shows to have these fun undercard matches.
Right.
They're really starting to click. Now, I've gotten in 96 before, not to jump too much ahead, but I know that things will start to
unclick
some. Early 96 Nitro is pretty rough and a lot of spots I can understand from what I understand and also from what I've experienced myself.
Yeah.
But December 95 was a very good month overall, I think.
Now, someone that hasn't watched this may say, well, that makes sense, right? I watch wrestling nowadays, and on the road to WrestleMania, things heat up. So I assume what happened was on the road to Starrcade, things heated up. And it isn't quite the case, right? Starrcade, you and I talk about it a lot. Starrcade is a really interesting place, especially at this time. this Starrcade is famously billed as the World Cup of Wrestling, which is one of those concepts that just on branding alone you feel like could be a really big deal. But as you kind of alluded to, execution is everything. Explain just here for a moment at the top. You referenced some of the, the New Japan invade, all that stuff. Explain not just what they're going for here, but also elaborate on the way it's promoted, because the World Cup of Wrestling sounds awful grand, but it doesn't really feel that way on the TV show, does it?
Well, if you recall, Joe kind of, Joe and I sort of brought it up in passing because hell, that's what they did on Nitro. Bobby Heenan makes a deal with Sonny Ono, and by the way, in the Nitro book, Sonny Ono becomes the liaison between New Japan and WCW because Bischoff just decided on a whim that his old buddy Sonny Ono would just become the
doesn't get any better than that, bro.
Mind you, Sonny Ono who did not know great Japanese because he's an American. He's a Japanese American. He's not even.
I'm sure it's fine. It's fine.
So there's this great story of Sonny Ono explains where he has to try to translate what these guys are saying, and Sonny Ono's his Japanese is not up to par, So it's do you know what I'm talking about, Joe?
Yes. I had forgot there's a definitely a portion where they just explain it, and they try to write this story in the fashion. They don't want you to be judgmental, but as they give you more and more details about poor Sonny, you can't help but sit there and be like, oh man, this is an incredible gig to give him. Incredible stuff. It does give us, though, the World Cup race. It gives us the WWE's best match of the month, right? Shinjiro Otani and Eddie Guerrero. I would say a pretty famous match just because it's one of those deals people point to again in terms of era-wise what this was for WCW. Speak to that match a little bit. Best match of the month for WCW. Go ahead.
I believe we watched that one on a watch long on the Grandication several months back. Probably just a few months back, actually 2 months ago. But 2 months ago feels like a friggin' eternity.
Boy, does it, man.
Yeah. So we watched that. It's just they seem to have good chemistry. There's the flow of the match is good. The pace of the match is good. Everything connects, hits.
Yep.
The crowd comes up a little bit for it, mostly because they're just clicking and things are working. That wasn't the case for the rest of the show. Although I will admittedly say I thought Johnny B. Bad and Saito kind of ruled because literally all they do is just smack each other the entire time and it rules.
It's just such a strange show in terms of pacing. And we'll get into some of the reasons with people doing double duty. It's just weird, right? It's a strange show.
Yeah.
But anything else on the World Cup element? Any other who does Savage wrestle in the World Cup part of the? What's his match?
Savage wrestles Tenzan.
Of course, right? Yeah. Which is hilarious because I'm pretty sure Tenzan's still wrestling in New Japan, right? I'm pretty sure. Wrestling being,
haircut and all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just about still there. Okay. Now, some would ask, Oracle, those not initiated in the WCW experience would say, well, why isn't Hulk Hogan wrestling at Starrcade? You mentioned his suspension. Instead, the focus is we have the triangle match, which you referenced. We also have the world title scene, which is this chaotic group of humanity. Starrcade concludes with Flair covered in blood with the big gold, which is how Starrcade should always end. God bless, nothing wrong with that. But speak to what's going on here in the main event into what is in theory their biggest show, even though you and I we don't believe it is that at this point. Hogan's not there. You have the triangle match is kind of the centerpiece, but then the belt's doing this and that. Explain best you can, Oracle.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. It's a lot, right?
It actually makes sense when you're watching it because Sullivan's such a good booker at the time. Essentially, Hogan's mad that he was screwed out of the title, which, let's face it, he was. Mm-hmm. But it was booked because Hogan doesn't want to ever look like a chump ever, he, God forbid, he even looks, remotely below or beneath anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So he's mad and he's angry and he's a chair swinging freak and he's, Steve Mongo, McMichael, and William the Refrigerator Perry are having to, frantically keep him at bay at one point on a Nitro where Hogan is viciously attacking the Giant and Flair and everybody else with a chair, and William Perry loses his hat and stumbles around. The funniest part is when the fridge loses his hat, and they're trying to hold Hogan back, and the fridge almost trips and hurts himself because he's trying to pick up his hat. It also adds to the chaos at the same time, so it was almost kind of like a fun little addition to that segment. Small things are fun sometimes. Well, all the time, really.
Some of those chair shots are pretty fun.
Yeah. Some of those he was actually swinging though.
Yeah.
Some
he wasn't.
The giant takes a bump. He was so athletic at the time.
Yeah.
He takes an insane bump over the rope. So after one big chair shot, so Hogan's just mad, and at first he's on probation. You're on probation. They put him on probation. Put the Giant on probation for chokeslamming Randy Savage. They put Flair on probation. Well, then Hogan keeps attacking. He keeps attacking referees, hitting refs in the head with the chair. It's hilarious. So they eventually just suspend him. And the funny thing is, they suspend him on I think they announced it on the 23rd of December. He's suspended for the remainder of 1995. What do you fucking do, da? That's just Christmas week. What good is that going to do?
I mean, that rules, right? Objectively, that rules. we should shoot that angle in the grin sometime, shouldn't we? Christmas week, we should have someone suspended for the rest of the year. Give Bob a week off. Now the triangle match the match itself is strange, but the story is compelling, right? Lay some of that out, and then we'll get into the fascinating structure of that thing. It really is an interesting match. Go ahead.
The sort of issue is Savage, so they do this thing where Hogan and Savage actually agree to a match the week before Hogan gets suspended.
Mm-hmm.
Because but Savage is also kind of great in this period because he wants to prove that he's a viable champion and a worthy champion because he kind of knows he won it in a crappy way. So they actually help him in a lot of ways by having him defend the title in multiple matches. Now they're not really clean finishes, but because you can't really have these guys lose clean. But at least it makes him look like a fighting champion. So that's actually interesting. The Giant is around, but they're kind of holding him back because they're holding on for that cage match at Super Bowl, right? They're kind of waiting for that. Flair and the Horsemen eventually get involved, just kind of out of nowhere. But it's Flair, but it's better that way because you need the Horsemen need to be involved in the main event scene. Flair needs to be involved. But the most compelling part is the Sting Luger relationship, right? And they cut these promos every week about how we're best friends. But Luger's like, I'm the uncrowned champion. I've beaten Randy Savage 3 times. I've beaten him up 3 times. Sting is just amazing. I love Sting's promos so much because he's out there going, he's just having a blast cutting these. And it's Sting, man. How can you dislike the guy? He's kind of out there, calling out Luger, saying, we're best buds, but when it comes to it, you and I are gonna face off in the triangle match.
Right.
It's really compelling TV because Luger's a heel, Sting's a face. You've got the fighting champion Savage, you've got the Horsemen and Flair and their antics. It's a really fun TV, I think.
How much of Flair's presence in the triangle match do you think is as simple as they felt to make that match what it needed to be? They needed Flair as the kind of glue guy in the ring because Flair he's up and down all over the place in that one, isn't he? It's just wild. So speaking, with that in mind, speaking a little bit to the match, you and I have talked about it before. It's the tagging and it's an interesting match. It's long, right?
It's 3 matches in one.
Yeah,
it's actually 3 matches.
Yeah.
Loss from PWO made a great post about it. about how it's actually just 3 matches in one. The first match is Flair and Sting. The second match is Flair and Luger, and the third match is Sting Luger.
Yeah.
And like Flair works. It's interesting because each match has kind of worked differently.
Right.
I thought Flair was great in this.
Oh, he's incredible in this
I
match.
thought he was great the whole month. I think he had a good match. He had a good TV match with Eddie. I mean, he's you know, he's really good in that match. Like, he just knows how to do it, and I actually really like the finish. Because Sting and Luger are up there, and then Flair just clips Luger. And then Sting kind of collapses on top of Luger, and they both fall out of the ring. That was a clever finish. And then Luger pulls Sting to let him come back in. That was good too. Like, and it shows that like Sting was willing to, like, if you notice, and I feel like it was a deliberate detail from Sullivan in his booking. If you watch this match, when Sting is going to cover Flair for a big pin, Luger pulls him off.
Yeah.
But when Luger's over there making cover, Sting's not, Sting didn't bother pulling him off.
Right.
Because Sting's, the more,
That's that contrast between them, right? They may be friends, but there's
more,
one of them's a good guy,
one friend, I guess.
Yeah.
But, and then it also proves true when Luger pulls him down from the apron at the finish of the match.
Yeah, it's good shit, man. That's the one thing, and we took like this format, waltz and all at times. This month, obviously, it was better than that, but the ability to actually have some nuance with the main characters is really prevalent with these shows. I do recommend people watch it because
and I want to point out it was hilarious when Flair bled so much from a megaphone shot, Jimmy Hart's megaphone, and then you could tell like Shivani and everybody was like, I don't think he was supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And so he was forced to put a towel on his head, and they refused to do the interview because there was like a total like no blood policy whatsoever at the time.
Starrcade, man. What are you gonna do, right?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Now, I want to quickly mention you had Savage's promo from this show was the best promo. You kind of referenced his attitude here on screen and off, right? This idea that like, he's aware of what's going on, and he's not going to let himself be victim of that. Speak a little bit to his promo here and just Savage in general as champ, and man, he's committed, right? Nothing else.
It's just Savage. He might be the best wrestling character of all time.
Yeah.
He's just out there cutting this wild promo like into infinity and beyond and all this weird shit. And it's popping me, and like he's just like talking about being a fighting champion and being Randy Savage, and it rules.
Yeah. Their closing match at Starrcade, obviously because of the circumstances, it's a short. It's like it genuinely is like, they have a few minutes there, and Flair does what you just mentioned. He's bleeding buckets because when you do something right, there needs to be some drama in this thing. It isn't quite the epic you'd want, but they do wrestle on TV. What, like 2 days earlier? So
yeah.
How do you feel about their matches together, Flair and Savage?
I remember liking the whole feud, particularly when Woman and Elizabeth get involved.
Yeah.
Because the whole deal just pops me.
Yeah.
Although it probably doesn't hold up quite as well in terms of
it happens. A lot of that stuff isn't going to hold up, bro. It's fine. I tell you what does hold up though. Added to the commentary team, this to me is the ultimate way to decide someone's green in professional wrestling. Dusty is on the team. You have Tony, Bobby, and Dusty. And folks, listen, this game may be subjective, but if you tell me that this team doesn't pop you, you're missing a trick, man, because this is a blast. These dudes very seldom care about what they're watching. It's amazing.
Dude, one of the funniest things I've ever seen is after WCW wins the World Cup or whatever, and Heenan's got his back to the screen, and he's getting all stuck in his chair, and Shivani is literally bursting out laughing and can't control himself.
Yes, it's incredible, man. It's Dusty. Like, I get why at the time, like the smart fan, I get it. I understand. We all take wrestling a little seriously sometimes. How fun is he when you go back and watch these pay-per-views, man? Dusty's presence, he pops me consistently on these damn shows. He's outrageous, and his chemistry with the guys. It's great time, right? Absolute great time.
Great.
Okay, now let's put a little bit of a bow on Starrcade. I don't want to say the cliche of it doesn't quite feel like Starrcade, because what does that mean at this point? The year before Beefcake was in the main event, right? But it's fair to say, Oracle, it just doesn't quite feel like Star. It's this strange show, right?
It really is. It is a strange show. It's not quite there. There's not very many Starrcades left that feel like Starrcade.
Yeah.
I love the build to 96 and Starrcade 96 itself. I mean, the show's not great, but it's a fun show. And one day in 75 years we'll get to that. But yeah, this was lacking a little bit of that pomp and circumstance that you want from Starrcade. Lacking a little bit of that big time feel and build.
That's one thing they do get better at in the coming years, right? Because especially if you look at the result of it is what it is, but the pre-match in '97 is about as big time as WCW ever felt. Like the Sting presentation is incredible, and even again, the result is what it is, but even Nash and Goldberg's match has that kind of energy, right? So that definitely improves as the promotion always takes a shift here in the following summer. But yeah, this one, what was the obsession with making these Starrcade cards like concept shows? So puzzling, right? Like so much of them, especially early '90s through to here, Battle Bowl, and now we have the World Cup. It's just It's strange. It really is strange. Okay, you mentioned this, so we'll circle back to it. The Horsemen and their kind of usage, then being inserted into the main event scene. They also have to deal with, the Dungeon of Doom and that whole thing, which is going to lead us to some hilarious places here in the next couple of months. Speak a little bit to the Horsemen and their ongoing kind of riff with the Dungeon of Doom. Two very similar factions in wrestling history, Oracle, right?
Yeah. So the big segment that occurs is, and it's the angle of the month, so I'm going to go and jump to that, is the Horsemen taking out Paul Orndorff. Yep. So what happens is they come out, they cut for a promo. They come out for a promo for Mean Gene. Good Lord. And Pillman gets on there and just starts this is really the first true loose cannon promo from him. He's over there and he makes a off cuff remark about the Dungeon of Doom and he's doing the shark thing. He's making fun of the Dungeon of Doom and just ripping people and saying and then he rips Paul Orndorff. Orndorff comes out and says he has a problem with it, and the only reason Pillman's a Horseman is because Orndorff turned him down. Then he slaps Pillman. Then Pillman goes after him, and the best part is Orndorff because he's a badass. I know it's an angle and everything, whatever, but Orndorff totally is whooping on his ass.
Yeah, he makes him earn it, man. It's kind of there's a lot of shooting there, right? It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's Orndorff. He's an old school guy,
right? And it makes it good. It's a hell of an angle, right? It's a hell of an angle.
And then of course Arn Arn's great. He's like, don't shoot. He's like, hold on now, Orndorff. I got a lot of respect for you, but you can't touch a Horseman, because it's. And so they end up beating the shit out of Orndorff and giving him a really cool looking spike pile driver. Flair gets up on top of the WCW sign on the entrance stage, and Arn's holding him up, and they spike pile drive him. And Pillman stands over and gets into the he's doing his Pillman shtick. And
it's only a couple more of these left, man, in terms of those kind of vintage Horseman moments, right?
Right.
I mean, I think the most famous Nitro one, obviously the most famous is Flair coming back, but that's a different vibe, right? They're
second
heroes.
One would probably be Arn's retirement.
Yeah, and I would say the one that fits this bill is when the NWO has arrived and they beat up Beefcake and they kind of send the message and Arn cuts that promo. You know the one I'm talking about, right? And we'll get to that here. It won't be that long away, but this is a classic Horseman moment, the one that kind of evokes memories of yesteryear. Great stuff. Now, moments that have lived forever. We referenced this in pretty good detail last week. The Medusa angle, right? The very famous, often replayed and clipped and so on and so forth. Right. Iconic, some would call it. You don't really feel that way here in December '95. Speak to it a little bit, Oracle. Go ahead.
One more thing on the dungeon thing, real quick. So basically, after that, Sullivan's mad that Pillman is taking pot shots at the Dungeon of Doom. So Sullivan's like threatening Pillman and telling Flair, and Flair's like, "What's up, devil?" Because he called him that. It's hilarious. And he's telling the Horsemen, you gotta control Pillman. So we're building towards Sullivan and Pillman now. I just kind of want to let that out there.
Yes.
But as far as the Medusa deal, this was so, it's weird. Like it's like I like the angle actually in some ways, but it's like I think the reason nobody ever talked about it until WWF sort of made it bigger is that they don't even talk about it on Nitro.
No. It's executed in the
She just shows
strangest
up and
way.
trashes it in the belt. The funniest part is when Bischoff pulls the belt back up and looks at it and drops it back in the trash. That's the funniest part.
God bless. That's the stuff you and I pop for right there, brother. So look, I think objectively this was a hell of a month for WCW in terms of Nitro, right? It's a little bit kind of, the water's a little bit muddy by the fact that Starrcade was just as kind of odd as it was. Not that it was terrible, it was just a strange show.
Yeah.
But overall, I think you laid it out really nicely there earlier, and I hadn't thought of this way. This is kind of a truly significant month for Nitro in its existence, right? The identity of that show is kind of taking shape in real time. So a thumbs up from a WCW perspective, clearly, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Okay, so there you go, folks. Clean sweep for Nitro. Quick look at the chat here because Connor asked the question. You and I are very familiar. The name of the Nitro book is, I believe, the good lord, the Incredible Rise and Inevitable Fall. Is that the?
I think it's called Nitro, but I think it's like Nitro. What is it? Colon or semicolon
Yes.
or whatever, and then the Incredible Rise and
yeah, there you go.
Something like that. It's if you Google it, Guy Evans Nitro by Guy Evans, you should be able to find him, no problem.
Oracle can now vouch. I've been putting it over on the air for years. It's incredible, isn't it?
It's quite good.
Don't get any better. Okay, we look ahead here. We're going to move now to ECW, their first month here without claiming victory in terms of the weekly battles. Now, they have Holiday Hell ahead. Now, you explain the significance of this pretty well in terms of first show in New York City. And so, do you think that's nuts to think that they're kind of hot here and that's like, this is happening now? I mean, that's kind of an iconic destination for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the significance apparent just watching the show? Does it feel like a huge deal in real time, so to speak?
It does. It does. Mm-hmm. Like you can tell just by how it's booked and like the matches they put on the show that it's a big deal. But they really throw a lot out there for the fans. Like they do a really fun show.
Yeah, so we'll get into that some here. Before we do though, Sandman reclaims the ECW title here. Speak us through that a little bit before we dive into what Holiday Hell is looking like. Go ahead.
So at December to Dismember, which they had the triple threat title elimination match: Sandman, Mike Whipwreck, Superstar Steve Austin, and Austin's only or second match that was at least televised in ECW. And then it might have been his last. It was aired on the December 12th episode of ECW Hardcore TV. And so it's Austin and Mikey to start out, and like Austin eliminates it's Austin and I think it's maybe it's Austin and Sandman that starts it out, but Austin starts it in there, and then I think maybe Mikey comes out later, and then they get into Mikey's kind of working underneath and double teams them, and Mikey actually gets pinned after the hot shot and or the stun gun, and it's down to Austin and Sandman, and they have a fun brawl. Sandman's such a blast. And he's legitimately fun and good at this time. I don't care what anybody says. And basically there's a bunch of interference because it's smoke and mirrors and it's Paul Heyman. And Sandman ends up covering Austin, but Austin gets his foot on the rope, but the ref doesn't see it. But don't do anything about it anyways because it's ECW
Fuck it.
and it rules. And Sandman wins the title. Sandman actually breaks a bone in his wrist at one point in the match.
My
Because
God.
I think it's a shoot, or maybe you know what, it might have been work. I can't remember. But with these guys, I mean,
Yeah.
Sabu's
Well,
in there, taping his jaw together a few years
I'm
later.
not sure Sandman knows if it was a work or a shoot. If you asked him
I
now,
don't
he may
know.
be like,
But he blocks the stun gun on the guardrail. I think he blocks it with his right hand.
oh, okay.
Yeah. And so
Yeah, that will
I
happen.
think that might have been a shoot, but
Okay. Now, Sandman at the aforementioned Holiday Hell show, he wrestles Raven, right? Now, speak a little bit to what Raven's doing here, because the saga with Dreamer continues. Get into that a little bit. Obviously, he's one of the main characters here. Speak to Raven's December 95. Go ahead.
yeah. So the Raven Dreamer feud, it continues on. So essentially, they have a number one continuous match set for Holiday Hell, Raven and Dreamer.
Mhm.
Well, they do this thing where Stevie Richards and the Blue Meanie come out after Dreamer's out and they say, "Sorry, Raven broke his leg. He can't be here. You have to face me, or you have to face my Blue Meanie." So Dreamer just beats them both with the DDT in like 30 seconds. Then Raven comes out and jumps him, and they have a really fun brawl. They have this really fun match. They brawl. It's a Dreamer Raven match. They brawl in the crowd. They go out and they brawl into Queens Boulevard for like 5 or 10 seconds, and they're both bleeding. And they're both bleeding. So and
Wow.
there's like cars and traffic going down Queens Boulevard. Imagine driving, and it's on a Friday night over the holidays. So imagine you've got family in Queens. Okay, it's Christmas '95. And you're going down this major road, Queens Boulevard. You look out, and there's one guy looking like he's at a grunge concert, covered in blood, and another I can't even describe the time
I
to
was
breathe.
wondering how he was going to describe. He just looks like a guy, right? He's just a
Some
guy with his
random
hands
dude,
taped.
some random guy, covered in blood, and they're swinging each other into a brick building. And somebody's like, "What's going on over at the Lost Battalion Hall?" And the funny thing is about the venue is there's no mats because CCW, so they just put the ring on top of the basketball court,
Oh,
and you
there we
see
go.
the basketball goals in the
Yeah.
background. Oh, it
Well,
rules.
that's one of Gabe's favorite tributes to ECW, right? He was a big fan of doing that too, so I'm sure it's fine. Before we move on from Raven, the Dudley boys leave Raven's Nest. You know what's fun? Like when I read Raven's Nest, it's wild that the flock has in wrestling history, it's kind of taken its place. In when people think of his fact, it almost caught me off guard reading it. Speak a little bit to the Dudley boys here. You mentioned Bubba getting over huge. Explain that process a little bit, Oracle.
So basically, Bubba getting over I think it's just kind of Heyman being able to read the crowd and going, "Well, let's just might as well just turn him babyface."
Yeah.
So Bubba likes to dance, and he comes out and he's dancing, and he sort of upstages Blue Meanie on a dance off.
Yeah.
So they end up having a match, and Steve Richards is like, "If you lose, you're going to be fired from Raven's Nest." Well, they end up winning, and Stevie's like, "Oh, it's just a meanie. We're just messing with you." And the Dudleys and Bubba Ray are like, "Nope, we quit." So that's kind of basically what happens.
Reading the crowd and going with it, brother. Who'd have
Yeah,
thought it, huh? You can do that stuff, apparently. There you go.
right.
They're in for a hell of a few years here, so we'll be covering that obviously. Quickly, I want to read, or I want to credit at least, a lovely super grin here from Franco. Says, just a tip for another great week, or how we appreciate Franco. You can do the same, streamlabs.com/late night grin. It's been a hell of a month, Oracle. We're a lot closer to selling to Spotify or the Ringer. Bob would rather. Well, he's easy with either of those options, right? He's a big Bill Simmons guy. Anyway, anyway, you mentioned Mikey Whipwreck. He had the month's best match on the Holiday Hell show with Too Cold Scorpio. Talk us through that one, pal.
You need to watch ECW Too Cold Scorpio.
I do.
Your assessment of him has disappointed me.
Yeah.
I really like WCW Too Cold a lot.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to watch his ECW stuff. You may not like it as much, but
That's fine.
I'm a huge fan. But I suspect you've probably known you've always been kind of an outsider on him.
Oh yeah, I think I enjoy him in WCW, and when he, especially when he teams his back, well, it's like he's obviously the clear kind of the center of that team in terms of
Right.
skill. I just haven't seen enough of him where he's like actually at his peak. Probably is the truth.
Right.
Because in
95, 96
WCW,
ECW, Scorp is probably his peak, honestly.
yeah, because in WCW, like, as fun as he is in WCW, he is very spotty, right? Like he'll
Right.
do crazy shit just kind of because. So
Right.
I really need to see more of this stuff rather than
Mhm.
before and after, because obviously there's
Right.
limitations to both sides of that. But anyway, I will actually try this. I watched the Bret and Bulldog match, which we'll talk about here shortly. So I need
Yeah.
to do some of these ECW things. Each show I have like
Right.
a little ECW tally. I haven't got to yet. I need to. So talk us through this one, Oracle.
So this is basically like Mikey's just such a good underdog.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of a divisive guy because people just think he's this crummy looking ring crew kid. I think he fucking rules. Obvious by my choosing of him and Crowbar as a tag team. But late night grin reference there. But
Hang on, we actually need to promote that. Folks, if you enjoy this content, latenightgrin.com, there is an episode of The Grin, and it's titled, it's the tag team draft. And we drafted tag teams from today. You could make teams. And Oracle's performance on that show will live forever in Grin history. That was an incredible night, wasn't it? And that's a real thing that happened. Crowbar and Mikey Whitbread, and he booked it too the next week, which is even funnier. So you got to go see that. I'm telling you, if you subscribed recently and you haven't gone back in the archives, I don't blame you. Go to that particular episode and find the draft portion. It's very funny. Sorry, Oracle, go ahead, carry on.
No, you're good. Worth promoting that. Yeah, so it's basically just like Mikey has these great comebacks. He times them really well. Of course, there's the crazy spots you always get in an ECW match, but Scorpio just destroys him, hits him with all of his big top rope moves, and he keeps pulling him up. But if you know the story of Mikey and you know Scorpio's character within ECW, it kind of makes sense. It's silly. I'm never a huge fan of that, right? You keep pulling him up and you could just pin him. But in the story and the context, it does make sense. You believe in those characters so much that it makes sense. And eventually it backfires, and Mikey gets the win. And I think Cactus helps Mikey win, actually. Cactus comes down and helps Mikey win. There's a ref bump because we need ref bumps in an ECW match when rules aren't even applied anyways, and it rules. That's the one thing. There are things about ECW that are grating, but it's also hilarious because it's ECW.
Yeah.
They insist on having ref bumps so they can do interference and weapon spots and stuff. Well, what's the point when you're just letting them throw each other chairs?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
At some point, it just became like a play, right? It was like a go-to. It was almost like something you paid to see, I guess. Well, there's the ref bump in another match, right? Yeah. I guess. I don't know.
The funny part is all the creative ways they do ref bumps. That's actually impressive. They find the most bizarre ways to do ref bumps. But Cactus comes out and beats up helps Mikey win.
Yes.
Because the thing is, it's for the TV and tag titles. It's one of those deals where if Mikey wins, he can pick his tag partner. Well, Cactus does it because Cactus still loves Mikey. Incredible. So Mick he's great here. Mick is like hugging Mikey and like, oh, we're the tag champs. And Mikey's like, I don't want to be your tag partner.
Is this the promo you listed as the best promo? Is this because that's that show?
Yeah,
right?
It's his pre-match against Sabu.
Right, we'll go to that. So yeah, talk a little about this. They're the tag champs and this whole thing. Go ahead.
So if we recall, Cactus and Mikey were tag team champions in '94. Back when Cactus was still babyface, and he and Mikey, he helped kind of Mikey. He took Mikey under his wing. Well, what I love about it is Cactus still loves Mikey, no matter what. He's still it's his buddy, But Mikey's like a babyface, and Cactus is kind of turned on the fans, and not kind of. He has turned on the fans, and he's he's under the spell of Raven and all this stuff. But Cactus still loves Mikey. So when Mikey wins the world title in October, Cactus comes out and hugs him, and he's the first one out there hugging. He jumps on him and hugs him, and then everybody else comes out and stares him down, and Cactus has to cower away and leave. And now he's helping Mikey win the tag titles. And It's funny. Like Mikey doesn't want to have any part of it, and Cactus is like, we're the tag teams. He
Is
just doesn't
he, genuine question,
tell.
is Foley the best ever when it comes to like finding the correct way to play off of a different guy as both friend and foe?
Yes,
He's
he's so
incredible
good
at
at
it.
it with
Yeah,
everybody, man.
yeah,
Like especially with The Rock. God, he's funny in The Rock stuff.
right.
Like Rock is funny, but like Mick is unbelievable. He's
Yeah.
hilarious.
And like
It's
think about that. Like he's with The Rock and he's stealing the segments, man. The dude's
like,
and not in a selfish way or a showy way. He's just fucking great. He's so good at what he does, right? He may be the best ever at that, man. I think that's kind of
he's so good.
yeah,
Um,
special guy. Great stuff. Okay, speaking of Cactus, best promo of the month for ECW was on this show. You said it's pre-match for the
mhm.
before this was Sabu. Speak to that one a little bit.
So Cactus comes out and goes on this long spiel about um, a famous fan at the ECW arena, John, who's wheelchair bound, and giving him a ride, and goes on this long spiel about all this, and basically he manages, because it's Mick, he connects it with
Yeah,
deciding that he's going to wrestle Sabu in an Olympic rules match, and he's being dead serious. And he's like, and we're gonna have NCAA amateur referee John Pee Wee Moore, because Pee Wee Moore is there refereeing, and he calls him out, and you go, Pee Wee's gonna give you the rules, and he's being dead serious, and they're reading like Pee Wee Moore gets on and like Mick's just talking about how they're gonna have literally like just gonna have an Olympic rules amateur wrestling match right there. And it's great heat, and like Mick comes off so sincere because it's it's
yep.
him, and the fans are all booing Sabu, and then John Bailey Moore gets on the mic and like he's explaining the rules, and it's hilarious. And it's like, you get takedown, it's a point. If you cannot touch the ropes, or you get a negative point. You cannot do no weapons. There's no kicks. There's no strikes. There's all this stuff. And then Sabu just beats the shit out of the ref, and then just have a crazy match. Insane. They have an insane match.
Yeah, that
Well,
tracks.
not insane. I mean, like it's one of those matches where like Mick is taking some horrifying bumps and spots.
Mm,
There's a spot where he gets his neck and his ear caught up in the ropes, like he did in Germany,
mm.
and it's his other ear.
Oh,
And the spot where he hangs himself, and Sabu fucking runs up and just drop kicks him, clump jumps on him, and Mick falls off, and you can see it. I swear to you not, Mick is checking to make sure his other ear is
oh,
actually intact.
incredible, man.
What's wrong with this guy? And then, well, it's the first show in New York.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that's what the thought process was.
Well, I mean, again, think what you just said. The time he lost it, he was in Germany. It was a spot show,
Right.
man. The dude's nuts. He's just different, right?
And they do. Oh my God, Nick. Then they do a spot where he gets Gorilla Plus slammed off, trying to do the cactus elbow, and it's on a basketball court, and he takes that typical Foley bump where he takes like, Nick's got a big ass, so he takes it like fast first. So there's this huge loud thump, but he also bumps his head hard, so so it looks like it's like that. It's kind of like those crazy bumps he took in like the Orndorff match. Remember that one?
Oh, that is incredible. Yes, that's incredible.
And like they also do at the end of the match, Sabu gives him an Arabian facebuster with a chair, and Mick barely blocks it. It just hits him in the face, and Mick's like, there's a great spot where Mick, like, I can't remember what happens. Like, I think it might be after the facebuster or before it or something, where like Sabu like kicks him in the face, and Mick just gets mad and just starts headbutting him as hard as he can.
An absolute blast to watch, right? It sounds like you had
a lot of fun.
Okay, elsewhere on this show, the best angle: Taz and 911 go face to face. The former, of course, as you mentioned, is with Fonzie, and they're running wild and all that good stuff's going on. Speak us through that one a little bit. I think I've seen the clip of the reaction to this. I'm pretty sure this kind of face off. So speak to you a little bit, Oracle. Go ahead.
So I want to point out, because there was an error that I had made in November. It was a big one, but I want to correct it. Taz and Sabu were tag partners. They weren't feuding.
Okay.
So this was like they were still. I mean, this was like really like a 3 or 4 year in the making build.
Mm-hmm.
So that when Sabu left, he and Taz were still partners, I believe. And that's a big part. So basically, Taz has a couple squash matches. He has one against El Puerto Riqueño at December to Dismember, and then another one against is it Koji Nakagawa? Is that right? From FMW at Holiday Hell. You may have to pull it up here.
Let me have a look. I'll pull it up. Keep going, and I'll confirm.
But they're just great squashes. He hits these crazy suplexes. There's a great spot in the Puerto Riqueño match where he catches him in the Tazplex. He catches him, the one,
correct.
The half Nelson suplex.
Mm-hmm. You were correct, by the way.
Okay, yeah. And Taz just laughs, and it's like the classic Taz like commentary laugh too. So it's great. He's like, ha ha ha. He like hits him. Let me tell you, he's great. The chants start sending Sabu, and Taz just takes a bump on his back and tells calling Sabu up, and it's just so good. He's like the most enticing guy in the whole company at the time, and his promos are incredible. He just gets on the mic, and at the December to Dismember show after he beats up a Puerto Riqueño, and he debuts the Taz mission, the Kata Hajime, and there's a great little side video after the match where Joey Styles explains the like
there you go
physics of the Kata Hajime. It's great, which is also something that Taz would later do with his team Taz gentlemen. And Taz gets on the mic and goes, "Hey, your boy Sabu, that fucking pussy Sabu." Like, he's saying all these things, and again, I have to be careful what I quote, but that was a bit of a stretch, but that's it's fine. And Taz just dropping F-bombs, saying Sabu's in New Japan, he doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't want to come here and perform for you guys, because I think he was at a New Japan show for this, and then at the end of the promo, he just goes, "Sabu doesn't fucking care about you, and me and Fonzie don't either. Fuck off."
I need to see these promos, right? I need to see these promos.
It's amazing. And then in the Nakagawa match, he just squashes him again, hits a bunch of cool stuff, gets on the mic, yells at everybody, and then at the end he goes, "Fuck off." It's just amazing. It's like it's very funny. It rules. Taz rules. He's so
simple
good.
formula, man. Trash talk that beats the shit out of guys. Right? Create an aura around that guy. It really is wild. Okay, I'm always intrigued by the kind of the rotating door in terms of talent here, especially ECW is very interesting there, right? Because a lot of guys stop through, right? So let's talk about some of the incomings, then we'll go on the other side of things. The Heavenly Bodies stop through here. I believe it was listed in the format as a cup of coffee run, right? They had here. They had talk a little bit to that, and then a little bit of Missy Hyatt. They're two talents that stop through here. Go ahead, Oracle.
Missy actually has a long stay because she manages Sandman for the majority of '96. And there's a whole angle there. I actually forget how that comes about, but we're starting to get into that.
Yeah.
So the very first segment of the Holiday Hell event, Stevie Richards and Blue Meanie come out and like are doing their weird thing, and Stevie Richards starts making some 1995 jokes of fans in New York City that would No way fly today. And I'll leave it at that. You can look it up for yourself. Tell you what, that show's TV mature disclaimer.
Yeah.
That sucker.
They made the most of it, huh?
Yep, makes the most of it.
Yeah.
So just um, and he spots Missy Hyatt in the crowd. Missy's out there, and she's actually really good here. Just kind of just like being charismatic and whatever. And right, Steve Richards is like trying to hit on Missy, and he's like, "I'll get you a date with Raven." And of course, Missy's all like excited about that, and so she ends up giving him quite the lip lock. Because he has offered to give her a date with Raven. So he got to kiss Missy Hyatt for that. So so that's how she's debuted, and I think she stays out there in the crowd for the remainder of the show because Mick addresses her on the mic in his promo.
My God, she just stays there. That rules.
I think so for like and the Heavenly Bodies show up because they're part of the Ultimate Jeopardy deal. They come in and they join Raven's Nest and they help come in and beat up the Public Enemy, beat up Dreamer, beat up Mikey Whipwreck too, I think. I can't remember. I don't think they beat up Mikey. It's Dreamer and Public Enemy. And they're like hitting on Beulah McGillicuddy and Beulah's box segments, and they're kind of just around for only a couple of weeks, and then Joey Styles makes a joke of Jimmy Del Rey is still in ECW, but his tag team partner has literally flipped. In regards to Dr. Tom Pritchard, who has joined Skip for Skip and Zip, the Body Donnas, and in the World Wrestling Federation. And so he gets, made fun of by Joey Styles every week on TV after that. As Jimmy Del Rey is a hanger on for a little while longer. But it was a very brief stay. The Bodies kind of they just sort of dissipate after Smoky Mountain closes. And
I really like them as a team.
They're such a good team.
Yeah. Smoky Mountain stuff's worth watching, man. It really is, right?
Yeah.
I know I'm like, for the chat, I know you've
I like both versions too.
Yeah. It's good team, and like that, people we talk about this a lot. You and I have kind of veered off in this around the grim, but like I don't think people sometimes today realize that you can build a
Joe has frozen.
Smoky Mountain, and they were the natural foil, right? Like it was,
right.
it was really cool stuff. I recommend that stuff. Now, in the revolving door, leaving the territory, we'll start with Woman, who shows up in Nitro. What, like January, February? Pretty soon here, right?
Pretty soon.
So this start there. What's going on with her in ECW?
So she's still there. She's still managing Sandman and Scorpio. She manages Sandman and the Raven match. But they do a segment on the 26th of December. There was because she at the time before the Holiday Hell event, she's managing every champion.
Right.
Because Scorpio and Sandman are the tag champs. Scorpio's a TV champ. Sandman's the world champ.
Mm-hmm.
And they do, and he says from the hotline stuff is great. Then this whole period, all three have hotlines, and Joey Styles,
that rules immediately. That's funny.
Joey Styles was like, "It's been reported from the WCW hotline that Woman will be the manager of World Championship Wrestling Heavyweight Champion Macho Man Randy Savage." That was a rumor at the time. Evidently, at least according to this episode of ECW, Woman has denied this claim and says she has no plans of leaving ECW, but the hotline will give you more with Lance Wright or whatever. Or something. So, House Party 96, which will be the first week of January. So next in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be 2 weeks, folks. When we cover January 96, House Party 96 has a pretty fun exit for Woman involving Two Gold Scorpio. I believe it's House Party that I've always enjoyed. Scorpio's comments are not the most flattering, but it does get a chuckle, and it's a cool way for a woman. She's been so dastardly,
Mm-hmm.
she's so good, in ECW that she has one of these legendary ECW exits that they actually do really well with. Heyman was always good about booking people's exits. He was great about that, especially their exits, debuts and exits. But
I guess he had to get good at it in some ways, right?
right,
I guess
right,
you know, it's
right.
it's different now when you have a less funded national promotion. They don't really run, right? Like these other national promotions we have nowadays, they run a TV tape in a month. Like it's not ECW's running shows, man. You have to. I
Right.
guess you have to get good at closing each chapter off. Speaking of such, the Public Enemy are out.
Mm-hmm.
When we started this journey a few months ago, right, they were really integral.
Mm-hmm.
They're out of the territory, brother. Talk us through it.
Yeah. So once again, their last event is also at House Party. They've got one last match. That's obviously House Party is named after them, right? It's Public Enemy House Party. That's their last big event, January 5th,
Mm-hmm.
before they head over to WCW and do their deal there.
That's a good way to put it. They do their deal there. Yes, they do that. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and Dusty Rhodes pops for all their matches, and it rules.
God bless, man. What an addition to the team, huh? Incredible.
Uh, but yeah, Public Enemy, they were probably the biggest heels, maybe arguably the biggest heels in '94, and the biggest faces in '95, and they're out. That was a big loss for them.
Do you think that goes under? Do you think their importance goes understated when people talk about ECW's kind of
It
history?
does. People don't
Yeah.
talk about them enough. They were
Mm-hmm.
huge, hugely
Mm-hmm.
integral.
And in fear of being dismissive, how much of that do you think is down to the kind of lack of success afterwards? Right, like it's easy for guys to
Part of
point
it,
at
yeah.
dudes that had these great, and that's not their fault necessarily. It's just,
Mhm.
do you think that's part of it that people have kind of?
Yeah. That's part of it. Johnny Grunge was not the greatest in the ring.
Right.
Rocco Rock was not bad. Rock's actually a good worker.
Mm-hmm.
Ian Rotten's not wrong about that. Rocco Rock really was a good worker. It's just the gimmick kind of hindered some things they could do in the ring.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were hugely important in ECW. And in some ways they kind of left the void there. At least in terms of the tag division, because they were so important to the company.
Yeah. Well, a guy that did go on to do some pretty big things, I hear, Steve Austin. I hear he did pretty well for
Oh,
himself.
I did too.
Yeah. He's wrapping up his business with ECW here. Obviously, the next few months are going to be fascinating from an Austin perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there in the end, obviously. But kind of put a bow on his run and what's going on. Obviously, we've talked a little about what he was doing this particular month, but just overall.
His run ruled, man. He was great.
Yeah.
He was so compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Promos were great. He looked good in the ring.
Yep.
He was motivated. Because the last 6 months, Austin WCW that man was not motivated.
Yeah.
Even before the injury, he was not a motivated man.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting squashed by Honky, or was it Jim Duggan or whoever the hell it was?
Duggan, yeah, they do that angle, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a clash, right? I'm doing a clash.
Yeah, or something like that. I can't remember, something like that, or it might have been Fall Brawl. Was it Fall Brawl?
It might have been. There's a deal where he doesn't think he's going to wrestle because his opponent's not. Steamboat can't wrestle, right? That's the deal. Steamboat can't wrestle, so he comes out, and then out comes Duggan, and he squashes him. Yeah, it's brutal, brutal moment. Yeah,
Imagine Steamboat's still being healthy and sticking around in that period.
Yeah, I'm very suspicious of some of those departures. It's just interesting, right?
Yeah. But man, Austin was his final promo where he is doubting himself and he goes in this really sort of rambling rant rules.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the last time we see him there. It's awesome. I think it's like the 26th of December, maybe, or the 19th of December, maybe.
Okay.
Episode.
Yes, it's I will say, this is not a piece of history that's forgotten. Like, this is regularly pointed to as like the the start of what happens next for Austin, right? It's whenever they document his story, they always mention this the same way they do for Foley. So it's interesting, those two guys that proved so pivotal here in a few years for WWF. They both
People forget Cactus was a full-on ECW original. That dude was there for like
yes,
18 months.
yes, absolutely. And in history, they're kind of framed as similar runs, right? Which isn't right, but it is fascinating that you could really. I'm not saying I would necessarily, Oracle, but you could honestly argue they're the two most important guys in the war, genuinely in the WWF side of things.
Yeah.
And here they are in 1995, right? The war's already underway and they're in ECW, so it's just interesting. Okay, let's conclude our visit WCW. Simple, I guess, to kind of wrap it up. They didn't win any of the weekly TV battles, but does that speak more to Nitro's improvement than any kind of decline for ECW?
It does.
Yeah. Okay, well, that makes sense. So another big month for ECW. I quickly want to give some love to a super grin as Bob's Exploding Knees says, boom, all caps, which I hope is merely a compliment of this content and not a reference to Adam Cole Bay Bay, in which case you'll be swiftly refunded and banned from this platform.
It could just be the sound that Bob's knees make when they explode.
I'll never forget him live tweeting walking in Vegas when he was at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
I need water, it's so hot here. He's like, hey man, what do you want us to do about this?
A bottle of water. There's like 75 of you on the TL there. Somebody must have run into him on the strip. Come on, get a bottle of water, why don't you?
I love the idea of like everyone that followed, all of his mutuals carrying around spare bottles in case Bob walks past. That sounds tremendous.
It's like, come on, it's dry heat out there. He's probably not even sweating. He probably don't even know he was hot till he's dizzy because he's dehydrated.
All to sit and watch Alexa Bliss and Eva Marie in a stadium, brother. The things we do. These are the games we play. Okay.
All to see 26 seconds of a bad rock bottom. Anyways.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, that was fun. Anyway, folks, there's a pod on there somewhere. If you go back deep in the archives on Patreon, called Bob O'Neill's Las Vegas Sins, and let me tell you, man, that's the time. Okay, WWF in your house seasons beatings is the focus, and we will start at the top. Bret Hart is taking on all comers in here, specifically the match for Bulldog. This was the best match of the month for WWF. I rewatched it earlier today, and it fascinates me how different this is to Wembley for obvious reasons, right? The circumstances are so different. What's most interesting about this match to me, Oracle, is that it's kind of just a textbook, trademark Bret Hart match. It's very simple in structure, but it's so well executed that you almost, it doesn't matter, right? You get swept up in it. Great match. Speak to you a little bit here, Oracle. Bret Hart, Rich Bulldog. In your house, seasons beatings. Go ahead.
The blood that Bret spills out there. Vince was about to have a heart attack on commentary. Please don't show it. Please don't show Bret had my heart attack. Remember when he said
He's incredible on commentary, man. He's terrible, but he pops me tremendously. When I did some of this watching, I was doing it with my brother, and he got actively frustrated with Vince, and I was like, I get you, but I can't help but laugh at that dude's he's ridiculous. It's incredible.
This match is fucking great, dude.
Yeah.
Bret is just a complete lunatic. People don't give him credit for the stuff he would bust out and do. He's out there hitting a perfect German suplex. How many times has Bret hit a German? Yeah. I mean, Bret, but that's what I like about it. He always pulls out stuff in big title matches. I've always said it. He was he's a wrestler's wrestler. He's a thinking man's wrestler. He was really one of the first wrestlers because it was Bret. He also knew to do it. He knew how to do it.
Yeah.
The first wrestler, one of the first big time wrestlers to ever go out there and legitimately try to have a great match.
Yeah.
But because it's Bret, he knew how to do it without being
performative.
I'd like to have a 5-star match.
Right.
But Bret, that wasn't Bret's style.
Right.
Shawn was really someone who wanted to be performative and do that.
Yes, very
That
showy,
wasn't Brett.
right? Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, he's so unique in that regard.
he's about technique and structure and execution, and
Yeah.
I mean, the gimmicks, a shoot.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's every time you don't want to be. We all get how great, like people know how great Brett is, especially in recent years. It feels like there's kind of been a shift in terms of narrative, but he is one of those guys where he's truly worth actually watching closely. When you watch one of his, especially a match like this, and like the detail and the way that he wrestles. This sounds so simple, but you and I both know this doesn't happen enough. He treats a professional wrestling match with the mindset that a prize fighter would treat their 12-round heavyweight title fight. So when you mention the German suplex, he does stuff that he's comfortable with because that's what you would do, wouldn't you? You'd have your bag of tricks. And the idea is when he does that, your reaction at home is supposed to be, oh shit, Brett's digging deep in this one. Like he needs to. He has no choice but to. And there's a level of kind of there's a degree of prestige that comes with that. The fact that he treats it so seriously. And like people,
Right.
dudes on shooting interviews can dismiss it.
Even the stuff like
matters.
Brett's desperate when he's bleeding. And he
Yeah.
does a dive and he's punching Bulldog, but he's also mad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a personal rivalry. It's a family
Yeah.
rivalry. But he goes to the well too many times in something he's not good with, which is he tries to do another dive and he gets caught with the power slam on the floor. That was Brett knew that. Like he just,
of course,
you can tell. And like oh gosh, there's something else I thought of. I can't remember what it was. But anyways, it's an excellent match.
yeah.
I got swept up in it for sure.
Is it your favorite Bulldog match?
Yeah, probably so.
I will say, and I know that especially over time, it's become. I think we've all had moments where we've watched the Wembley match and kind of not hand-waved, but I think there is some question as to how great it truly is.
Mm-hmm.
But that is definitely a spectacle, right? Like there's something to be said for both. So, but I think this is the better match. I think pretty clearly, actually.
Bulldog's bump on that turnbuckle. Good Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned it the other night. We were talking about it the other night, right? You mentioned it.
Well, the thing is, he lets go. He lets his whole body go. So he does the flip. But because of that, he doesn't use his hands.
No.
So his body just ricochets off the turnbuckle and then it just sort of bounces him off his head. It's incredible.
Shows you how much it meant to him, brother. I mean, that was pretty impressive, especially from his part.
My favorite were the shots to Diana. Throughout the match.
They do a lot of those, right? Good Lord, they do a lot of those.
She's just making her,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they could have, after the 15th time, they probably could have waited for her to change her facial expression, but they didn't. They said, no.
God bless Diana, but boy, that poor woman has no charisma whatsoever.
No, it's, Now, you had here as best promo, Cornette, right? How much did he add to this whole thing? Because as we said, I love the build to Wembley. I love that build, and the way that the kind of riffs begin to appear. It's great. But this is a different dynamic, and you need a heel promo here, and Jim obviously fills that void. Thoughts on his role in the program, and then specifically that particular promo?
He doesn't seem all that involved on TV, but this promo, he just sort of runs down the Hart family and runs down Brett and how he treats his family. It's Cornette at his best. He's got run-on sentences. It's like, you're wondering when this dude's got to stop to catch his breath, but he never does, and he just hits everything with such oomph and just incredible delivery. But
this is as close as Bulldog got to, like, if there was ever a top guy in him, having Cornette by his side was going to get him as close as he could, right? And I think, this match is about the finale of that. It's kind of it's unfortunately a bit of an outlier. When you compare it to the match with Diesel we just covered a month ago, right? Like, I think we understand why it didn't stick, or 2 months ago. We don't understand why it didn't stick, but this is about as close as he ever got. Now, Brett, as the ace, first month here as champ, back as champ anyway. How we doing with the Hitman in the center of this whole thing?
Oh, he's great. He's great. He's awesome.
Would you say it's a case of, unfortunately, the rest of it isn't quite up to the You know, it can't capitalize on that.
Largely, that was Brett for a lot of his run there. He gave it his all, man. Brett, people are still so harsh on him. God, people probably think I'm Canadian. But people are like, well, he was the best guy in WWF. Like, that guy was fucking good, man.
Yeah.
Like, not only was he the best guy, he was the best guy by about,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Do you think he's like, he has to be one of the top all-time wrestlers for like nerds like you and I, in terms of, I would love to, if I had a time machine, I would love to experiment with how Brett does elsewhere, because I think you and I are pretty confident he would be fucking awesome. But just as a fan, like, there's just some interesting like scenarios, right? Like, he's prime here.
Right.
You know, if you go from, what would you say his prime is, 92 to 97?
Yeah.
It says. It's like, he's in this promotion that in so many ways,
Maybe
until 97.
91.
There you
He
go.
was pretty good 91 too, but
So,
92, 97 is probably more accurate though.
You know, that kind of range,
Yeah.
right? Until 97, where it kind of changes, the product changes. Like, for most of his run, he feels so stylistically at odds with everything else that's happening, which in some ways is awesome, but in other ways it makes you just think, like, what would have happened if he was, it's just interesting. He's obviously
he got close,
didn't
he, to go in WCW
Yes.
in 92, right?
January 92, I believe, yeah. And that's like,
Could you imagine?
well, if you look
Skip
at,
Allen Fry.
he would have been in that kind of all-star babyface lineup against the Alliance, right? It would have been,
Yep.
he would have been alongside
You know what else
Sting.
would have happened? He would have had some like cool, fun feud with Cactus Jack.
Oh god, yeah.
And they would have had awesome matches.
The big one for me is because they were good friends, and I don't think they ever worked singles matches, was him and Rude. And in 92, Rude is like, they would have probably been a perfect match at that time, because the way Rude was selling in that time, and he'd kind of figured it out, but his body wasn't shot yet. It would be in about a year. But yeah, that's the one that always comes to mind for me. But you could have got the Arn Anderson match in there. You could have got the Bobby Eaton match.
Oh, don't do this to me.
Let's go back to 95. Anyway, elsewhere on the season's beatings, your Diesel, he worked down hot. Talking a little about his Shades of Grey, obviously he has just lost the belt, and he is doing some of the like original shoot stuff here, right? It's kind of interesting.
As Vince said, if you wear the glove, he'll definitely give you a fire.
There you go. What do you think of this stuff?
Nash doesn't have the best execution. I actually think his facial expressions are really good.
Yeah.
But like, Nash is always better as like a smartass. And he does have a little bit of that here.
Yeah.
But like, I always think he's best as a promo when he's like a smartass in NWO. He's also worse as a promo when he's a smartass in NWO, but he's also at his best at the same time. So it's kind of cheesy in a way, but at the same time, it's like, it's much better than what we had of.
That was a pretty good go of it, man. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, but is this one of those deals where, because it's kind of like weirdly uncharted territory, it feels like they don't know how to do it almost.
They get better with it over time, over the next few months, especially at the Rumble. I think it's the Rumble where like he like flips off Taker and Brad or something.
Right. Is Nash overrated as a promo in history? Do people just assume? Yeah.
I think so.
I think this is going to surprise no one that watches my content, but him and Sean feel like guys that everyone just kind of like just lists as great promo guys that I've kind of like. I think when Sean got older, I get it, but like 90s Sean, 90s Nash, I'm good on their promo. I ain't really rushing to see their guys' promos,
No.
It's always interesting, that stuff to me. Like, he's a guy you'll never see people take those shots at him, because people just kind of go, well, he's a charismatic guy. He must be a good promo. Not necessarily. Now, Razor Ramon, we talked a lot about his deal with 1-2-3 Kid. At the pay-per-view here, he's with Jannetty Wright against Kid and Sid, which is a team we kind of alluded to. So I talked a little about that team. and we'll get into what Razor's doing later. But start there with once you've reconsidered, who obviously have Ted by their side and so on and so forth. Go ahead.
It's a fun dynamic. Sid just like we talked about this a little bit last week, but Sid's just like screaming in the mic and like they did this funny promo for the pay-per-view. By the way, the Sid kid versus Jannetty Razor tag's good. That open season's beating. But Sid, they do this promo where Sid's like, I feel bad for Marty Jannetty, in his Arkansas accent. And he's, I don't want to hurt Marty Jannetty. He's in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Sid's taking too long to do it, and like kids like Waltman's like, all right, he's just trying to be like, are you being serious right now? Are you being serious? Are you sure? Do you really feel bad? He's like they're like trying to like move Sid along here, because they got time here. It's only an hour program. And Sid finally goes, I'm just kidding, and he cackles, and and it's all very funny and like $1 Million Corporation, New Generation, cheesy-esque, but it's rules at the same time.
Tremendous.
Yeah,
I love Sid.
It's a fun tag team. Sid rules, man. He has the best entrance. One of the great entrances of all time at Survivor Series 96.
Yes, he does. That's a scene, by the way. That whole thing is a scene that needs to be viewed, right? It has to be. It's a wild, wild spectacle, and it's a great example of. Again, that's not one they bring up too often in the documentaries, is it? The night the Garden just said, we're good on this HBK shit. Sid should kill him.
Yep.
That's where, of course, Bob loves this because when we were doing we used to do a series. I'm actually going to bring it back here soon, and we have something else kind of that Oracle knows about, which we'll announce soon. But I did a series for Fightful on Twitch called My Match Monday, and people would send their match, and I would, review it as best detail as I could. And Bob sent in that one, Survivor Series 96. And that is where JR says the line that Bob popped huge for when I said it on the air, which is, Sid has the nameplate deal. He has like the big name when he gets in the ring. And JR goes, SID, suddenly I'm dominant. And for a fact that when Jim put that in his notes, he was like, well, that fucking rules. Like, you can imagine Jim pumping his fist. A tremendous deal. The atmosphere is electric. And that entrance, the energy of Sid in that entrance, the fucking pumping fists of people and shit.
Oh God, I know, and it's like, and you've got like the famous fans like Vlad in the front row, and like that whole scene is just incredible.
Listen, man, he probably shouldn't be in a real Hall of Fame, but the Fed Hall of Fame with some of the guys in there, put fucking Sid in there, man. That'll pop me huge. I don't like when people like, look, he was very flawed.
Come out there and promote a softball, club or whatever.
It's just, I get he had his faults and he wasn't a great worker, whatever that means. Dude was over wherever he went. He was a top guy for that period there, that like 5-year window. He was going to be a top guy wherever he went. Give dude his love.
He also had the grossest injury I've ever seen, which is not really.
Yeah, which is, still, it feels important to mention. I agree.
Still don't know why. But you know what? It's so Sid to do a top rope big boot at that age.
Well, the story is that it was Johnny Ace, right? Have you heard this?
What?
The story. I wish Alex was here, contrarian Alex. But the story is that I'm pretty sure the story is that Johnny Ace, who was the Finnish guy at that time in WCW and had taken a lot of power, he suggested that to spice up Sid's offense, he should do a big boot, a flying kick off the rope, top rope, middle rope, whatever he did.
Oh my God.
That rules so much. Could you imagine Johnny Ace watching the monitor?
Sid just, going, yeah, sure. Oh,
yeah.
God bless him.
Now, look, in fairness, Sid also said that, the famous line of, I have half the brain that you do.
Mm-hmm.
He claims that was written, right? Sid says that was given to him and he just read it as was written. So I don't know who we should trust on these matters, unfortunately. As much as we just put the man over, he's still a wrestler, right? Here's what he is.
Sid rules.
Yeah, he's the man. Okay. Speaking of folks that DiBiase is involved with, we have a big angle on the pay-per-view, right? A man we believe to be Santa Claus Savio
That
Vega is out there. Yeah, exactly. Big swerve. Savio's out there. Of course, this is Balls Mahoney. This is I think I'm fair to say this is a mostly forgotten like thing, right? Surely. I think this is talk
a lot
about
of
this
people
a little
forget
bit.
about it. It's one of the all-time dumb things they've ever
I
done.
have to be honest though, the angle itself pops me, and I don't know if it's good. That's probably too far. But to me, this is like classic pro wrestling. Like
Oh, yeah.
everyone knows there's some shit's gonna happen, and of course Savio doesn't because he's a babyface and it fucking rules. Anyway, explain
And
the
then
deal
he
here.
and then he falls into a vat of liquid nitrogen and
That was a Bob tweet today, wasn't it? Yes.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. Here we go. We just got there. We just got. Okay,
Yeah,
Oracle.
we're talking about all balls here now.
Yeah. Go ahead, man. Explain this whole
So
masterpiece.
Savio comes out with Santa Claus before they knew it was Santa Claus.
Indeed.
And DiBiase comes out and says, do you believe the magic of Santa Claus? And Savio's like, I believe in the magic of Santa Claus. And DiBiase's like, well, anybody can be bought. And then the Santa attacks him with a sack of gifts, and it ends up being Santa Claus. They brawl down the aisle, and it's Balls Mahoney. And Balls just looks like basically Mick Foley with a shaved head at the time, so it's very funny. And he was once Boo Bradley. I think that was his gimmick in SMW.
I believe so. Yeah. Was that how he was here? Was because Cornette? Was that because I know Cornette was like one of his big supporters, which is hilarious considering what he ended up doing and Jim's thoughts on all of that. But yeah,
I think the last time Balls had any relevance, he was the dealer at ECW Strip Poker in 2006. So
well, there you go. I'm sure that's been seen many times on YouTube. So there you go. Poor Savio Vega. He's in an interesting spot here, isn't he?
Great worker.
He put over Goldust in his debut, and he's here doing this. He's really good, man.
He is good, man. He's a great babyface. He's over. I love him coming out when he slaps hands and like his.
Do you know he until recently has been doing matches for MLW?
Really?
See, there's stuff on
As
MLW.
Savio or as TNT?
As Savio. Oh. He was like the Caribbean champion and shit. There was a moment the other day where Shoot was saying that his first step for wrestling promotion would be to have Kevin Von Erich do promos, and I explained to him that he does that on MLW like once every 2 weeks, and Shoot went, "Really? Oh well." Just moved on with his day. That's how it works over there in the major leagues, brother. Then again, though, Oracle, they are building around Davey Richards right now, so maybe especially don't watch that show.
Oh, important note: Santa Claus is from the South Pole.
That is important. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes.
and he also steals things. He steals gifts.
God damn it! Listen, man, if you're gonna look, I'm big on this. You know this. If you're gonna do wacky, silly camp pro wrestling, just at least go for it. They go for it, right? God bless them. I mean, I tuned into Raw to see the stolen egg, and I was very disappointed. There was no silliness like that. I was very sad. Speaking of bullshit, Brother Love is back. Are we like? I think you and I both pop for enjoying stuff that is mostly panned, but this is a step too far for even us, right? Fuck, Brother Love's brutal, man. It's not good, right?
It's rough.
Yeah. He does the segment with Santa Claus, right? Isn't that what he does here?
Well, he interviews DiBiase about Santa Claus, and then DiBiase brings up, we're going to have $1 million champion, which is the tease for Austin.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk a little about that character as in general, best you can, and then his return here.
Brother Love is just... I feel like it was a rib on Bruce Pritchard.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. Probably.
The pitch at one point for Bruce was like... I think he said the pitch at one point was for him to be like Heenan's little brother. Which is incredible. Am I back?
Yeah. You're like fast forwarding.
Okay. Well, it's just incredible that a man can go from my gimmick could have been Bobby Heenan's little brother to instead I played Brother Love. They feel very different to me, but anyway, yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? Unfortunately, it sucks.
It's unwatchable. It's like, it's just like, oh, the music, the tone, everything is just like, This is bad.
They always go so long, too, especially back.
I know.
What about the Mania segment he did with Piper? Was it WrestleMania? What's the one when Piper comes back at
Piper
Mania?
and Morton Downey Jr.
Yeah, it goes on for years, man. They do like improv comedy for 15 minutes in the middle of the ring. It's fucking brutal. It's
Yeah,
terrible,
it's
terrible
bad.
stuff.
It's bad.
Okay. In better news, the best angle of the month WWF is the one you mentioned there, the video about Sean's collapse, and Vince is doing the very serious narration
Mhm.
of said video. Talk us through this whole deal. We praised it a lot, last month. It was the best angle here, the video following up. So speak to Sean's famed concussion angle.
They're doing all sorts of stuff. Like every week, there's a segment. First segment of the week was like the doctor was talking about it, and he was like, Sean, he may never wrestle again. It was hilarious. It just ruled because they go all in for this. You have to when you do this stuff.
Yeah.
And the next week is Vince's video, and it's just like he gives this great narration. It's like really well. It's like really poignant, and like he's like the wrestlers and the risks that they take. Is this good or just? It's like it's almost like a 60-minute type
Yeah.
style, but with like soap opera music, and then like then they also do a sit down interview with Todd Pettengill and Shawn Michaels. Shawn's like playing it off, the injury off, everything, and Pettengill like, "Are you retiring?" And then like there's this thing where Shawn, this one didn't hit as much because like Shawn's
Yeah.
not great at this acting stuff.
He thought he was
Obviously.
fucking fabulous at it, but yeah, he's not very good at it. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, and he gets all mad and like ends the interview and like says people just that's all they want to know, and it's like playing off that he's all upset because deep down Shawn knows that that it might be over.
Yeah.
They end the entire year because they're promoting Raw Bowl, and Lawler keeps forgetting that Raw is in the next week, so Vince gets mad. Vince is like, "Come on now, Lawler, you got to remember Christmas. There's no Raw on Christmas. It's in 2 weeks." So that they're promoting the infamous Raw Bowl, and they end the show. Vince, we got a Shawn Michaels video for you here, and they just Shawn video. Tell me a lie. What am I? Whatever.
What a way to
Tell Me a
close out the
Lie,
year.
which has become a great wrestling meme over the last 25 years. People will like play it, as a troll or a meme or whatever. One of the all-time great like what the fuck videos ever.
Yeah. Well, it was Christmas, man,
Yeah.
Speaking of such, are you surprised they didn't tape something for Christmas? Or do you think that
A
was out
little
of their
bit. I
hands?
mean, Nitro did.
Do you think that was like not their decision or something? It could. I feel like Vince would have done something.
It must have been the decision of the One USA Network at the time.
Because you mentioned it a few weeks ago, but you know that there was a week of Raw, and I remember at the time not at the time when I watched it a few months back, where it starts like the big multi-man, and then there's like just loads of video packages. That's like a 20-minute block. So they easily could have done an episode like that, even right, if they didn't have enough first runs. So
Sure.
just interesting because Nitro. I mentioned it before. Nitro runs Savage and Flair, which
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. Okay, final one here for WWF. I mentioned Razor earlier. He's moving on to this program of Goldust that's been talked about a whole lot because of the kind of dynamic of what Scott did and didn't want to do, right? And that whole thing. Speak to it here, the early days of this program. Go ahead.
Boy, let me tell you, some of those Goldust promos on Razor Ramon are, I mean, about as blatantly sexually suggestive as you can get. And you can tell. I mean, it's such a risky thing to do. Even now, it'd be risky. Although I feel like it would be more
be framed very differently now.
Yes, it'd be
Rightly
framed
so.
different.
Right?
It'd be framed, rightfully so.
Yeah.
I think in a more positive light now.
Yes.
But at the time, it was a very risky angle to run. And you can tell Hall is like doesn't seem to be too comfortable with it. But it's a fascinating angle to watch. I don't even hate it, honestly.
No,
it's just fascinating to watch. In fact, I actually like the angle. It's just when you're dealing with when you're risking homophobia and stuff like that, you have to be it's
wrestling historically does not handle those.
No, it does not.
And I think that's clear at this point, even, right?
It does not handle things like that very well at all. So
the Goldust character, and that's a big part of his legacy, right? Is kind of it was bold at the time, and I think it's worth remembering. This product is, when Nitro gets hot, Vince is the first one to kind of fly his flag and talk about how their show's family friendly and stuff, and like he's pushing the envelope because he wants to shock you with this Goldust character, which is where again nowadays it will be framed rightly, very differently.
Right.
Which has made it age in a very strange way, right? Where it's kind of like the way the baby faces sell is the part that's kind of jarring. It's just is interesting. Like this next like year and change is the best of the Goldust character, right? Like when it gets me when Russo gets his hands on it, it becomes just like he does what he does with stuff.
Dude, you're gonna roll your eyes. The artist formerly known as Goldust rules.
Okay, well, I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get to 2026. Okay,
that stuff is like completely absurd. Some of those Vader matches are actually pretty good.
Yes, they have the match at the Rumble, right? They have the match at the Rumble.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll cover that in due course. See, that to me is just like that's where wrestling is the weirdest thing ever, right? Like they have like an opening match at the Rumble, and like it's fun, whatever. But it's impossible not to think of the match they have at that Clash of Champions in like 93, Dustin and Vader. Like how different that feels to where we end up. And that shit just happens sometimes. It's odd. Okay, so you mentioned last month that WWF was showing some signs of life. And obviously they did the move you wanted them to make. We all wanted them to make, both in retrospect and those that watched in real time. Brett is the champ. This is not the best follow-up. It feels like, there's kind of a lack of interesting elements here in WWF beyond the centerpiece that you're a fan of. What do you think?
Yeah, there's not a lot of. They had a little steam going in Survivor Series, and I think they kind of lost it.
Yeah.
Partly is it's the holidays, and WWF has like traditionally done that every year in the holidays. But we're gonna get some big stuff. Rumble's coming up. The Diesel Taker storyline is starting to build up for that. They had a big confrontation at the end of In Your House because Taker's announced, Taker's down the number one contender. Beat Mabel in the casket match. Got his urn back. Got the urn necklace back. He's at full power now. No, Taker's at full power, as Vince yelled. And
okay, so not quite the follow-up to November he was looking for, but with Brett and the wheel, there's some signs of that it can get better. All right, now those of you that watch the Late Night Grin will know that many months ago, the great Oracle of Wrestling had an idea, and he said, "What if we did like all elite teams?" Was I think the term we settled on, which they used on TV once, which was a pop. We would do, first team, second team, third team in AEW, and we would talk it out. And, we scheduled it. Right? We had this thing like penciled in like 2 months in advance. And Oracle did not seem to realize that much like, Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, he was walking into a trap, right? He thought he had this great idea, a great piece of content. Next thing he knew, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega were on the first team, and he was sweating bullets. He was sweating bullets. So I didn't realize this was going to happen, but I'm very excited about it. This is the end of 1995 for the historical Oracle. Obviously, we've done 4 months, right? So Oracle was produced, first, second, and third teams. Big 3 all-pro teams, what we're calling them, right? So before I run down the third team, quickly explain kind of like your mind, how you've can't, unless you want to do that after. It's up to you. What do you think?
I'll go ahead and explain it. So
Okay.
there's seven spots for each team.
Mm-hmm.
Tag team, group, singles wrestlers. The only rule is that there's 7 spots for each because there's a lot of people at the time, 3 companies, and there's a lot of star power at the time. It's the hottest period, maybe ever.
Yep.
And the one rule I had is that I hope I was consistent with it. If not, oh well, fuck it. At least one WWF, WCW, and ECW person has to be in each team.
Okay. All right, let's go. I'll read the whole team, and then we can kind of go piece by piece. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the third team, folks. Here it is, the big 3 all-pro third team. We have the 2021 tag team draft member, Mikey Whipwreck. We have Johnny B. Bad. We have the Eliminators, Too Cold Scorpio, the Dudleys, Diamond Dallas Page, and Marty Jannetty. Okay, let's kind of make our way through this. Would you say Whipwreck is the star of this team? He's probably the one that's closest to second team. Him or Too Cold? Would you say? Maybe Johnny B. Bad though.
Mikey Whipwreck probably is the star of this team.
Right.
And mind you, my thought process for these rankings is based on the overall enjoyment of them. It's not just in ring; it's the overall enjoyment of the character, because I think it matters when you're watching in this. It's
TV format. Product, man. It's TV product, right?
So Mikey, I think, is probably the highlight of this. He's just a great underdog.
Yeah,
had several good matches. Just a fun wrestler to watch.
So fair to say, Johnny B. Bad and DDP, their efforts together very much earn them their spot here, right?
Correct. Yes.
Spieler, we've been pretty consistent putting those guys over in their work together, but just anything to add in terms of their placement here? Johnny B. Bad and DDP, who have been rivals for this whole process, basically.
Bad's had some good, he had a good TV match with Eddie. He had a great match with Pillman, remember, at Fall Brawl. So he's had a really solid year. I liked the Saito match at Starrcade. It was fun. Right. He's just been consistent and solid. Great theme song. He's fun, man. And DDP is really putting it together. He's starting to figure out like the formula, the DDP formula of putting a match together, which he's becomes brilliant at over time.
Absolutely.
So it was a good tail end of the year for these guys.
We have 2 teams, the Eliminators and the Dudleys. Talk us through. I know the Dudleys, the character side, Bob has been rolling, right? So talk us through that, Michael.
Yeah, the Dudleys is more of a character thing. It's just like they're fun to watch. Bubba's super over. The segment at the opening ceremonies of November to Remember ruled, where Bubba did the ring introductions. The Eliminators are just spot guys that come in and just do fucking crazy shit, and they rule. And like they literally have like these awesome matches with the Pitbulls where they just hit like 75 different spots, and it's like, and like Pitbull number 1 keeps no selling everything. It's hilarious. And like it's just, it's fun, man. Like the Eliminators are awesome. They just they hit, like, their offense is so good. And they, I don't know, it's just, they're a total blast to watch.
Yeah.
They're lunatics. Like, they can do high flying stuff, grappling stuff, suplexes, hardcore spots. They're extremely dynamic offensively. Like, they're my kind of team that does like that, because they're just like come off very unprofessional and like
kind of wild, right?
Yeah, they're wild. Like, and it's like their finisher, total elimination, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with.
Yeah.
That's like one of the most sketchy, dangerous moves you could possibly think of. It doesn't always look good.
No.
But A guy's being asked to stand there and just brace himself.
Yeah,
With
man.
Perry
Trust the
Saturn and John
process.
Cronus, two complete fucking lunatics, sweep him under the leg and kick him in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah, some teams did it more gracefully, but it definitely looks most incredible in this time, right? It looks hilarious.
great.
It's brace yourself is the key term. Too Cold, Marty Jannetty, the two singles as to conclude here. Is it fair to say Marty was he's the last name listed? Is it fair to say he just snuck in there with this
He
kind of
snuck in there
weird?
as like just a really good
Yeah,
undercard babyface.
it's a short run, but he does good stuff while he's there,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
As for Too Cold, is it a case of more his usage? I feel like you'd have probably liked to get him into those higher teams. He wasn't the way he was
Right.
used. This is about as high as he could go, right?
Right. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay,
He had a good year. Just yeah.
compared, it's hard, right? Yeah, it happens. Okay, so that was the third team. I'll go back and read it one more time. Mikey Whipwreck, Johnny B. Bad, the Eliminators, Too Cold, Scorpio, the Dudleys, Diamond Dallas Page, and Marty Jannetty. Okay, second team. Eddie Guerrero, the Sandman, Taz, 1-2-3 Kid, Psychosis, Randy Savage, and the tag team of Owen Hart and Yokozuna. Let's lead here with Savage, who obviously just dropped the world title at Starrcade. He feels like a guy that I could imagine when you was doing this process, you kind of considered him as a TV character alone to be a little bit higher. Was the matches not up to snuff? Is that, do you think, the limitation here?
He has some good matches, but he almost feels left out from the
Yeah.
Hogan situation
Yeah.
and the Luger Sting situation. He had a good December, but then the Flair, the Horsemen. Flair had such a good first 2 months, and then he kind of he vanished in November, but he had a good December. Savage kind of just floated around everywhere and didn't really always fit into every
Yeah.
little. I mean, he had a nice month in December, but it was always kind of a
Mm.
he didn't always fit in perfectly. I mean, he was great. I think he was great as a TV character the whole time.
Yeah.
And he did fit in on Nitro, but in terms of the storyline and the focus, he was never really
Yeah.
the focus. And
Strange, right?
that hurt him with his ranking, I think.
Yeah. Almost like that was done on purpose, Oracle, if you didn't know better, right? Almost.
Maybe.
On the ECW front, we have Sandman, Taz, and Psychosis. Talk us through those a little bit. You've been big on praise for all three. Psychosis, is there stuff beyond the famed Ray trilogy as well, or is it
There's a
mostly
tag
that?
match with Psychosis and La Parka versus Conan and Ray, where they just get
Okay.
squashed by Conan and Ray, and it rules. And Psychosis bleeds in his mask, and then just take
My God.
crazy bumps and suicide dives, and it's literally amazing.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a great month for Psychosis. Or not month, but a great 4 months.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was just great in the ring.
Big time for Taz, as you've explained in pretty good detail. He was a lock for one of these teams, right?
I mean, I think we should anticipate. Don't be shocked to see first team 96, 97,
Yeah.
98, 99, Steve Austin and Taz right next to him.
They just shot the angle with Taz, right, where he just took a big shift. So
Right. Taz just rules, man. He just rules.
Sandman. Go ahead. Continue, sir.
No, you're good. It's just he rules.
Yeah, fair. Agreed. Sandman, obviously, he closed out the year as ECW champ, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of their top guys. And you've been pretty consistent on at this time, man. He's down. He's fun. He's good. So he belongs here, right?
Oh yeah, he comes out. He has a 20-minute entrance and stares into the TV. It's way too long and annoying, hilarious at the same time. And then he some matches he's way too drunk to work, and somehow he still rules, and somehow his opponents don't get hurt, and he does stupid shit that rules because it's the Sandman. At the Holiday Health show, he pulls the guardrail close to the ring and goes to do a dive, and instead he just leaps over the ropes and lands on his feet, then hits Raven with his cane. What the hell is that?
Everything's in character when you're the Sandman, right? Because what you said, he's a dumb drunk at worst. What does it matter, right? It makes sense. So
Right. He
it's
suplexes
unique in that
people
sense.
with tables.
Yeah,
He suplexes tables onto people.
that
Boys.
rules.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go next. Let's go with Eddie Guerrero, who is like one of the first kind of.
Do you see that Y I put in there? I put that Y on that name, brother.
I didn't know.
Did you see
No.
that? Like Eddie, EDDY.
Oh,
WCW spell.
I thought you meant why, as in like why he was there. I was like, so
Right.
yes, of course, yeah. So
Um,
who was it who tweeted that? And people like quote tweet Dunk, like you misspelled his name. That was
I,
tough.
I
Um,
can't remember.
yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
I know what you're talking about, though.
yeah, Eddie is like, everyone talks about the big kind of international stars that they sign, guys that had done Japan and Mexico. Eddie's like the guy who's Nitro, man. He's in the thick of things, and he's just fucking great, isn't he? One of the most
He's
versatile in ring. He's a great wrestler.
putting it out there, man, and he's
Yeah,
just having a fun match every week he's on.
yeah.
And he's on a lot. He's had several matches, tons. He's just consistent every time. Smooth, just has a good
Hmm.
match with everybody. A variety of people. Flair, Benoit, Sergeant Craig, Pitbull, Pittman, Alex Wright, Malenko. He's just having matches. Johnny B. Bad. He's having matches with everybody.
Hmm. It's an archetype I really love. I think the rosters
Mm-hmm.
are so big now; it's kind of lost of like the true good match guy in the middle of your card. The guy that you say we need a good 10 minutes. Eddie Guerrero's your guy at this time. Now, obviously, he becomes much more than that, and as a character, he obviously explodes here in a few years. But at this time, he is just a great pro wrestler. Okay, two of my favorite acts from this era of WWF made the cut: 1-2-3 Kid, and also the team of Owen and Yoko. Um, Owen and Yoko are just good TV, man, and
Mm-hmm.
we both popped for that Smoking Guns match. They do the night after the pay per view, right? And speak to them a little bit as a team. It's a short run. It's a run that often makes me wish that Yoko was a couple years earlier because at this point he's struggling, right? It's a shame, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they're still a really fun team, aren't they?
Oh yeah, and Owen is just there's a consistency with Owen.
Yeah,
It's just he comes in there and he just hits his stuff and it just looks so good and
yeah.
he's so confident in there and
It feels easy for him, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
wild, yeah.
And Yoko's timing is still great, even with
Hmm.
his issues. He's still got the timing down.
Such a unique worker, Yoko. Like
Yeah.
he had that ability, and this with timing really covers it perfectly. But like the way he would like kind of snap into motion out of
Mm-hmm.
nowhere was really special for me. He's a big guy, man.
Yeah.
He was about unfortunately, he was about as big as it got in pro wrestling in terms of size. So yeah, he's still got a lot to offer here. It's just a shame that this is near the end of his like run of relevance, right? Is the babyface turn coming up? So we'll cover that
Soon.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But 1-2-3 Kid is just a huge asset to Raw at this time. If it wasn't such a stacked era, I honestly think he was first team material with his work against Razor and alongside Razor.
Mm-hmm.
He does a hell of a job. Speak to a little bit. This is a great time for Kid, man. He's really is an important figure on Raw.
Yeah, he's killing it, man. He's a good heel. He's
Yeah.
smarmy. He's a little, he's a little douchebag punk. He's a great worker.
Yep.
Just he can work an opener. He can work a mid card match. He can even dabble in the main event a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's done somewhat in this period.
Yep.
He's a great. Waltman's a great worker, man. He's really good. People forget he's like 22 here.
How wild is that?
I know. Well, I think he
It's,
might have been like 24, but still, he was young.
it's just it shows you how good he was that he was such a feature on their TV at this time, looking the way he did at that size, right? It's just
In fact, he actually might have been 22 because wasn't he like 17 for the Jerry Lynn matches?
yeah, he was super because
Yeah.
when did he kind of like wind down as a full-time guy? Because I
02?
right because
02.
the talking
Remember he
point
was
was
there at
that
WWE and then he
yeah
went to TNA and he was like he was very open about it. He was like, "Oh, I was high on meth at the time."
yeah exactly,
Um,
and the conversation was like very much the fact that at his age he still had a lot of years left. It's just the way things worked out, and shit got in the way and happens. But hell of a talent. This is a great time for him. Okay, it's time for the first team, brother. The first team, the Big Three All-Pro first team for 1995. Here we go. We have Bret the Hitman Hart. Big surprise there, right? Shocker. Cactus Jack, the Four Horsemen, Sting, Lex Luger, Steve Austin, Rey Mysterio Jr. I want to start with, Waltman's only 49, by the way. There you go, chat. I want to start with the guy that I was intrigued when you pitched this to me. The rest of these names fit. Luger was the one that I sensed would be like on the bubble. Was this a difficult decision for you, or is it more a case of that character work is too good to ignore? He's a damn good addition to WCW. He has to be in there. What do you think?
It was a difficult decision. I bounced between him and Sting and Savage were kind of like, I was all kind of struggling, but I was like, that Sting Luger Luger story that starts in October or early November is so critical and so compelling, or that I had to include it, and include both guys there. And there are some fun matches, but it's more about just like that jump works so well for Luger, and he immediately fits in, and it's like, it's good stuff, man. It's good stuff. And the Sting dynamic is great, and Sting's promos at this time I love. Like,
yeah. Sting's. This feels like a forgotten time for Sting, and as someone that loves it, and you're saying the same. Like, that bums me out, man. Like, people's Sting timeline jumps from like 93 all the way up to when he's the Crow, and it's like, I love this stuff in the middle. Like, he's great here. With the promos, he's almost more of a top guy than ever. Unfortunately, there's other guys in the sport he should be in, but that's another conversation for another day that we will eventually meet, I'm sure. So Sting and Luger very much belong. Let's jump to let's do the other WCW guy here, or guys here, with the Four Horsemen. We've talked a lot about kind of what they could have done maybe and what they should have done. But when it comes down to it, when the bell rings and they have a microphone in their hands, like, they can only fall so far, can't they?
Yep. I mean, it's got, you've got Flair and the Flair and Arn feud, Pillman, the loose cannon stuff. Benoit's had good matches, so it's with everybody's work all together. I think it's fair to put that whole group on there over the course of the 4 months.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Arn's still cutting the promos. Flair's still cutting the promos. Flair had a great December, great matches, great performance at Starrcade. Pillman's loose cannon stuff starting to kick in. No one knows Benoit's a Horseman because they refuse to say so on TV for some reason. They just mentioned that in passing too. Whatever.
Which is
Arn's
incredible, really.
Arn's Arn.
Yeah, he's the same. What would you say is Arn's best year? I'm intrigued by this because he's like, his skill set. See, I would say the reason for that is because he's physically in a better spot than he would be by this time, but he has that kind of that polish. Because people don't realize because of what he looked like, but he's fucking young when he first gets in the Horseman, man. Like, people think of him and Tully as like, brothers and arms. Like, Tully was his senior.
Late 95, Arn's like 36.
Right. So if you go back a decade, dudes, and like, people don't realize because of in history, and this is wrong because Tully was so great, but in history they're the brainbusters to most people, right? But they weren't like. Tully was very much his senior, man. Tully had done some big time stuff before Arnold even broke in. So it's just,
right.
It's interesting. I would say, 92 is a good call, I would say. And you get, he has 2 tag runs there, right? He has the Eaton team, he has the Larry team. So anyway, that'll be another series one day. Those Alan Fryer days, brother. Good glory days, man. People don't know. Anyway, let's jump to ECW, right? We got Cactus. We've got Steve Austin. We've got Ray. Let's start with Cactus. He felt like a lock.
his promos were just, he was promo of the year. There's no, he's just, he's, the thing with Mick, man, is he's just, the way he was able to play off everybody, like we mentioned, maybe the best ever at it, and just he felt like you or me, just a regular old guy,
Right. And what
I mean, he
makes that
obviously
so
clearly isn't a regular old guy, but his
right.
personality
But
is.
that's what makes it so special is you often use that for description for guys that act like the normal guy. But like Mick, he's often doing insane, ridiculous, crazy things, and he still feels like a normal person.
Yeah.
He's singular in that sense, almost,
Mhm.
right? He's a
Yeah.
one-off. Okay, elsewhere in ECW, I mentioned these guys kind of together earlier. Obviously different, as you said, but Austin, and as he's going to be appearing on a few of these teams in the coming years. But man, this is a huge year for him in terms of changing directions and setting himself up for what's about to be a life-changing, industry-altering run. Speak to his 95 a little bit, Steve Austin.
Oh, it was just great. I spoke about it before, but
Yeah.
he motivated is the word I would use the most.
Yeah.
He was finally motivated again, and it just, he knew he needed to tweak himself a little bit, and he did, and delivered in spades.
Mm-hmm. Rey Mysterio Jr., who, if he had the opportunity, could still be on our first team today. He may be. I don't watch enough to know. One of the greatest wrestlers ever. That dude, right?
It's
Where's the left
Ray.
say about Ray,
I'm
man?
even gonna.
Yeah, dude's magic, absolute magic. Okay, the only WWF guy, first name listed, and I think we all expect him here.
And I'll
Bret
go ahead and
Hart.
say,
Yeah, go
that's
ahead.
right, my wrestler of the year.
Bret Hart, who that is not surprising, but if you haven't watched every episode, guys, please do, because you'll realize Bret's matchmaking could have very much prevented him from doing it, but he refused, brother. He said, I'm going to have the best match I can with Isaac Yankem, and, it's Bret, right? Same deal. What's the left to say about Bret Hart, man? At this point, dude's
It's just,
all-timer.
he's a master. It's like that hockey coach that said that contrarian Alex quote tweeted when he said Bret Hart was the best of all time. It's like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, I don't necessarily think Bret's the best ever, but he's one of the best ever, and
it's a
he just
respectable
rolls.
pick, right? It's a respectable pick.
He rolls, man.
Awesome. Okay, let's close out with the match of the year here in the Oracle standings. It's intriguing.
Bret Diesel.
I wasn't sure you were going to go that way, but now you say it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a match that has the kind of substance that sticks all these years later. I think there's ideas in that match that we'll always remember.
Right.
Story beats that may even be, tributed on TV every once in a while on TBS, right? So,
yeah,
a great call. With all love to Kevin Nash, explains why Bret was the rest of the year that he had the match of the year here, because I'm not saying he was the shits or anything, but that's a Bret. That's a Bret deal. So there you go, folks. Bret Hart rest of the year. Bret and Diesel match of the year. If you want to see how to talk more in depth about that whole build and stuff, go to the last episode. We talk about Survivor Series 95. Okay. That was 1995 Oracle. Any final thoughts?
ECW promotion of the year.
Oh, there you go. Yes. Is there a show you'd pick out? I'm interested. A single show.
November to Remember 95.
Okay, so there's some. If you guys haven't watched any of this and have been watching along, we appreciate it. But there's some kind of like a little bit of a guide there, so to speak. Now, my God, wonderful donation here from Leland, who says, "Evening and all hail. Sorry to arrive late, but had to support the lads. Going to rewind. But this period is why the Horsemen are the best stable of all time, in my opinion. Storytelling excellence. Well, you'll enjoy it, pal. We definitely talk some Horsemen, and however you get any argument from us on the faction front either, right? It's the Horsemen, it's fair. We appreciate it. Great. Thank you very much, man. It was a great donation. Okay, now, 1995. An incredibly important year. And obviously, I think it can be argued that what's about 6 months away, 90 changes, it reshaped everything.
This is our first hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
95 was our first hurdle. Our next hurdle is January through May of 96.
Yeah.
And then
the 2 hour
wish me
hurdles
luck.
arrive.
It helps that WCW rules for about a year and a half.
Absolutely.
And then things will become much, much, much more difficult. But we'll see,
We will. And it's important to note, bless Oracle, he watched this. This was a quick turnaround. Week to week, we did this, right? The pace of this series may fluctuate, right? It's a long-term thing. So,
We've got some projects on the horizon.
Exactly. And there's different stuff that's going to come up. And, a big thing for me is I want the historical Oracle to be something that's separate from just this, right? We want it to be something where we do deep dives all over the place and we have different people. It can be, a lot of things. This is the focus right now. And there will, as you said, there'll be hurdles, right? When those 2 hours and maybe even 3 hours arrive, that's something. But it's been one hell of a start. Congrats to Bret the Hitman Hart. I'm sure he's very proud right now to win this prestigious award, right? He's not won many wrestling awards. This is a big one, right? The all teams thing popped me tremendously. Folks, if you watch along, feel free to leave those in the comments or whatever it is we do here on the YouTube. Do the thumbs up stuff. Oracle, before we bid farewell, any final thoughts, my friend?
2 weeks from now, we'll be returning.
Mm-hmm.
Nitro on January 1st in the Omni. Raw Bowl, I believe the Billionaire Ted skits begin in January 96.
I'm terribly sorry on your behalf there, brother. That's a shame.
Vader, Steve Austin, debut in World Wrestling Federation.
Wow.
Shane Douglas will return to ECW in 1996.
Lucky him.
Yeah. Woman will debut in WCW. Savage and Flair will pay Hot Potato with the belt in January.
Yeah.
There's a Clash. Clash 33, I believe. 32. Clash 32.
What's the main event of that Clash? What's the main event of that Clash?
Oh, gosh. Hogan and Savage, or Hogan and Sting versus Giant and Sullivan or something.
Yeah. Those clashes, they're very Battle of the Belts, those clashes.
Yeah. and of course, the Rumble. ECW House Party, final show for Public Enemy and Woman in ECW. That's a huge show. First show 96 in ECW. Huge show. So big month that we're going to be covering here in 2 weeks on the Historical Oracle.
An even bigger year, right? Some huge stuff ahead. And those of you that listen to the Grim will know there's some of that stuff that you and I get pretty fired up talking about just out of context.
Yes, exactly.
It's going to be very fun.
Jay Shell and I are in the works on our Divas Deep Dive project.
Tremendous.
We've moved it forward to 2010 since we realized that the titles are actually unified in 2010 to only the Divas title. So my whole spiel about Hooters has been dropped in the can, and
that rules.
And watching wrestling shows there. My sadness for Great American Bash 2008 has been eliminated, and will instead be beginning at Night of Champions 2010. We still haven't figured out every little nook and cranny of the show, but we will sort that out. So things works, folks.
Yeah, and the other thing too is we have a bigger project that's going to be like a monthly thing that I mentioned to Oracle, which we'll roll out here shortly. But I do want to say, if you folks watching along have ideas, send them to us, right? It might not happen immediately because we have a whole lot of shit to schedule in nowadays. But I think both of us are pretty open to playing around with this stuff, and there's definitely individual episodes of the Historical Oracle we can do along the way, right? For certain things. There's been times in the Grim where you and I have veered off in very different directions, and I think that could happen here. So if you have certain ideas, message us either on Patreon or on, I don't know if you can do it on YouTube, like in Twitter, DM me or whatever. And yeah, man, lots to look forward to. This has been a big month for us. I guess this is our, this is kind of our last free show of the month. Aside from the 12-hour stream that I have inexplicably penciled in for the
28th of February.
Yeah, for the 28th. Before that, tomorrow night, Late Night Grin, the flagship program, latenightgrin.com. You can sign up for $1, and that gets you in there after Rampage for 4 hours of just bullshit and a real roller coaster. That show, isn't it? It's really it's an experience to go through live. I feel.
Will you be eating during this 12-hour stream?
My intention is to hopefully when other people are here, Shoot's gonna pop in and out. That's when I might just bounce, get some food. Do
Yeah,
I'm gonna need to step away every once, but I do intend to be there for 99%.
It's not necessary to wear a diaper or anything like that. Now,
Yeah, it feels excessive, right? Tomorrow I'm gonna announce the details and charity and a whole lot of stuff. So there is no plan. I want to be very clear about this now. There is no plan for all-star guests. I think that would be a bad idea based on the fact that I'm doing a 12-hour stream and I don't want to be meeting people 10 hours into this stream. That feels like a bad idea. I think some grinners are going to rotate out every once in a while, but mostly it's just going to be, it's going to be a challenge. But we'll do it anyway. That's Monday. So lots coming up, folks. As Oracle said, the Historical Oracle probably about in 2 weeks. We appreciate the support. We appreciate the love. It is time, Oracle, for the outro, the new stunning outro. So with that, you can follow me. You see it there at Joe Hulbert, at KingOverH for Oracle. Follow us there for updates. And with a wave, we say, enjoy the illustrious Late Night Grin outro. Goodbye.